Welcome to another edition of Life, Love, and Philosophy. My guest today is a man who has had many diverse experiences. He has served in the military as a commissioned officer. He has taught both high school and college. He has lived for extended periods in Japan, Germany, and Hong Kong, has worked in the business world, and is also an avid runner and highly respected track coach. His name is Jim ONeil, and he happens also to be a friend of mine. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. We'll be talking about many of those experiences. I wish especially to zero in on your years living in Japan a little bit. But first, since I know that you're an avid runner and have coached track teams, let's start by talking about your interest in running. How did you get interested in running?
Well, I wasn't really interested in running at all in the beginning. As a kid, I played a lot of sports, as we all did in those days. Nothing was organized. We found our own empty lots and played baseball on the field and touch football and even tackle football without equipment, all that kind of stuff. But we were very active, and I think we were all pretty fit. You know, the problem today, a lot of kids don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we did. Anyway, 7th grade, I went to public school, PS 222 in Brooklyn. And teachers came in one day and said, we're going to have a big sports festival. And every school, every public grammar school in Brooklyn can enter their best runners in a track meet. So we were divided up into different groups depending upon age and I think height and weight, something like that. Well, I was a little kid. I tried out and was one of the 3 selected from PS 222. I was running 50 yards. I was the shortest, I think, because I was the smallest, right? 7th grade. So we went out there, and it was held at Wingate Field, which is still around today, believe it or not. The stands were packed. I think it was the most people I had ever run.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, I was 12, almost 13, 12. And, you know, I saw all the people in the stands, and I was just scared to death. And I had very modest goals. Don't come in last. I knew that I couldn't win. There were about 200 kids in this age group, so I knew I couldn't win. That was impossible. But please, I don't want to be humiliated in front of my friends. So off we went. There were 8 of us. Take your mark. It said go. We ran, and 1st and 2nd place were taken back to the next heat. Well, I was either 1st or 2nd. I don't remember, but I made it. You know. So 3/4.
Was this a revelation to you that you were so good at running? Or did you know prior to this that you were
I didn't really
runner?
know much what was going on in those days. I was kind of like, had a blank mind, I guess. It was just, okay, so I go back to the next heat. So same thing, this was maybe the quarterfinals. Same thing, I won and moved to the semifinals. This is all within a space of about half an hour. So next thing I know, I'm in the finals of the race. And oh my God, what am I doing here? 8 kids lined up across the track, no down start. We're wearing sneakers, no track shoes, no training, anything like that. So take your marks, get set, go, bam, and I ran. I won.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it.
Probably
and
the most thrilling moment of your life up to that time.
It was, and not only that, there was a picture in the Brooklyn Eagle the next day, and guess whose picture was in the paper? Of all the kids, of all the races, there was my picture. You know?
Now this led to a lot of good things in the future, because I know you went to college on an athletic scholarship.
Well, you know, before that, I went to high school on an athletic scholarship.
Did you? You went to a private high school?
Yeah, I went to St. Francis Prep, which was in those days was in Brooklyn. And
boy, you've saved a lot of money with your running.
Well, I'll tell you that story.
It's been very profitable to you.
Jim McHugh was the coach. He had just taken over the reins. He was a very, very good coach. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know who he was. But he had heard that I had won this race. And in my 8th grade, I won the 60-yard dash, you know, so I was like a double champion there. So he invited me for tryouts for a track scholarship to St. Francis Prep. And I went down to Red Hook Stadium, which is just a dump of a place. I don't know if you remember. It used to be a very nasty neighborhood. And same thing, you know, run 100 yards, whatever it was, you know, no idea what I was doing. And when we were all, I didn't think I did particularly well, but when it was all over, he said, well, I can offer you a half scholarship. You want to take it? And I said, yeah, I guess so.
Yes. And you had never had any coaching
no,
this time?
No, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I had a half scholarship. So I saved my father a lot of money. Tuition was $200 a year. So half scholarship meant we only had to pay $100 a
And in
year.
those days, that was a significant sum of money.
Well, it was about a week's salary probably, but anyway, so I got 4 years of high school education at St. Francis Prep for $400.
Yeah.
Then the kids, there were like 6 of us, I think, who won scholarships that day to St. Francis Prep. And I think 4 or 5 of us also won track scholarships to college. So McHugh had a good eye, and he was a good coach. He really worked us hard and made us into good runners.
Yeah. Time permitting, later in the program, we're going to get back to this and talk about your coaching career. But you know, I do want to talk a lot about Japan today.
Okay.
So let me just go on a few more minutes concerning the running. I know you still run. You still jog and run. Why? What motivates you to continue to do this?
Well, for me, it's the best sport for many reasons. It's something you can do your entire life. And when I say that, it's literally true. You may have heard of a guy named Larry Lewis who was running at the age of 106. Actually used to run to work. Used to run 6 miles to work. He worked as a waiter in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, you know. So you can do it forever. It's a very healthy sport. I mean, it gives you terrific fitness. You never have a weight problem. You live better. I mean, after going for a run, I think you feel energized. You know, I know you've done some running.
Yes, I very much agree with you.
Scientists or doctors have proven, I believe, that your brain power is better, and you stay, your brain stays intact longer. I think you're less susceptible to dementia and things like that if you exercise vigorously.
I can never remember.
And it's cheap. It's a great.
Yes, is that nice?
You don't have to spend a lot of money.
And you can do it alone.
You can do it alone. You can do it in practically any weather, and you know you don't have to spend a penny on it except for your shoes.
Yeah, I came to the conclusion years ago when I was jogging and running regularly, mostly jogging, but I came to the conclusion that it was good for my soul in the sense that I can never remember not feeling better mentally and spiritually after a jog than before a jog. I can remember many times going out to jog and I was feeling a little tense, a little nervous, maybe I had a difficult day, some problems, and after jogging I just felt so much more relaxed.
Do you think it's a kind of meditation?
I do, I really do.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you ever put earphones on?
While jogging?
Yeah.
Never. I wouldn't do that.
Never.
Yeah, I think that would interfere with the experience for me.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is be distracted. I like being out alone and listening to the sounds of nature and, well, maybe the sounds of passing cars too, because sometimes that can be a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to take it pure. Without any distraction.
The other nice thing I found about jogging, and I can't do it anymore because I have a bad knee, but I did jog for I guess about 30 years, is that not only does it relax me, but it allowed me to be outdoors during every season of the year.
That's right.
And you begin to experience the different seasons more directly when you're out for a 1-hour jog in December and March and April, etc.
Absolutely.
So I think that was another aspect of another beneficial aspect of running and jogging for me.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's talk about Japan.
Okay.
I know that you lived in Japan for some years. You speak Japanese. You are married to a Japanese woman.
That's right.
And we've often talked off camera over the years about your experiences in Japan. I've always found it very interesting. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on my program was to talk about Japan.
Okay.
How did you get interested in Japanese culture?
Well, just like with track, it was purely by accident. I went to Seton Hall University, as you did, and I was in the ROTC program there. You know, those were the Cold War days, and I was going to be drafted anyway, so I figured, well, I'd rather go in as an officer than an enlisted man. And so I was in the ROTC, and at graduation, I got a commission as a second lieutenant. However, I wasn't to go on active duty for a full year, 51 weeks. So I had a year to kill, basically. And what am I going to do? You know, nobody wanted to hire me for a year when, I'd be off to the Army and maybe never come back again. So I got a little part-time job somewhere. And just about then, Seton Hall got a grant from the government. It was part of the National Defense Education Act. You may remember that. Everybody got panicked after Sputnik, you know. So they decided we're going to teach strategic languages, they call them, at certain universities. And Seton Hall got the Japanese and Chinese grant. So I figured, hey, that sounds interesting. You know, why not study Japanese and Chinese? So I did. I enrolled and took classes. They were downtown Newark, you know, near the Prudential Building. And so for a year, I was studying Japanese and Chinese, and I found that was yes. But I was having big trouble with Chinese. The pronunciation, the tones were really just baffling to me. So I sort of focused on Japanese, and a year later, you know, I went into the Army, and I don't know if it was by accident or design, but by some miracle, the Army decided to send me to Japan.
Just by coincidence?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they looked in my file and saw that I had some language ability in Japanese.
So you were stationed in the military in Japan?
Yes. It was the island of Okinawa, which, of course, is a prefecture of Japan today.
And rather famous.
And, yeah, I spent a year there, and that was very interesting. We were stationed on a missile site way up, way out of, you know, the center of population. So I got to hang around a lot of little villages and walk around, and I saw kind of rural Japan in a way that most GIs in Okinawa never got to see.
Could you speak Japanese reasonably well in those days?
Poorly. I could get by on, you know, some very, very basic things, but you don't really learn much in a year, you know.
How much time have you spent in Japan since your military work?
Well, after I got out of the Army, after a year or two, I got a job with American Express, and my first job with them was in Japan. They sent me to Aomori Prefecture, is way up in the north. So I wasn't in Tokyo at all. I mean, I'd go there once in a while, but basically lived way out in the sticks. And they sent me there because I had some Japanese ability. I had since, when I got out of the Army, I continued my studies at Seton Hall and had become a little more conversant in it. In Japan, I had to use Japanese a lot because I was kind of on my own there. I was managing a small office, and all the employees were Japanese except for myself.
You know, I'm very impressed by the fact you can speak Japanese for this reason. More impressed than ever. As you know, the last year or so, I've attempted on my own to learn Spanish because I've been spending some time in Spain each year. And Spanish, by all accounts, is one of the easier languages to learn. That I know that Japanese, the Japanese language does not have the alphabet that English and Spanish share, so it means you're learning a whole new way of writing as well as speaking. The sounds, I think, are more foreign to our ear than Spanish. So that, you know, when I think about the fact that you've learned how to speak Japanese and have even taught Japanese, I'm kind of astonished because of my own difficulties in trying to learn what I understand is a relatively easy language to learn, and that is Spanish.
Well, what you say is true about the difficulty of the language. The State Department, which of course has to teach many languages to diplomats. My son is involved in this kind of work now. They put languages into 4 categories, 1, 2, 3, and 4. When they send their diplomats overseas, they give them language training. The easiest category is Category 1, and that includes Spanish.
Probably in Italian also?
I think so. The Western European languages.
Yeah.
German, I think maybe in Category 2. But Japan is one of 4 languages in Category 4.
Yeah.
Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and I believe Arabic. You need about a year of day-long training to get reasonably conversant in Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to put a lot of effort into it. Sure.
Let's focus now on Japanese culture.
Sure.
My guess is many of the viewers who are watching now don't know a whole lot about Japanese culture. What should Americans know about it?
Well, let me see. If you go to Japan, you notice some differences right away. Some things just hit you right in the eye. Like, for example, the cars drive on the left, not on the right. The streets usually don't have names. It's kind of hard to believe, but that's true.
Yes, yes.
The houses are numbered not in their location on the street, but in the order in which they've been built. So number 15 may be next to number 79, you know.
Creates real problems for the person delivering the mail.
Well, no, it doesn't, you know, and that's, believe it or not, it doesn't, because each section is a little community where everybody gets to know everybody else, and the mailman knows everybody else, and the policeman knows everybody else.
Yeah.
But there are some of these superficial differences. You know, you dial 119 instead of 911, and the stripes on ties even go the other way. I don't know, instead of this way, or that way.
Yes.
But those are superficial things, and you can adjust to those pretty quickly. What I found really hard to deal with, and I think most foreigners do too, is that so many underlying principles of Japanese society are different. A lot of the assumptions that we carry with us just don't apply in a country like Japan. I'm quite sure this is true in other countries too. I haven't had experience living in too many other strange places like that. But say like in the Arab world, I'm sure there are many, many assumptions that we have that don't apply there. You can get in so much trouble in Japan when you may sincerely be acting the best way you can, and you find that you've committed some terrible faux pas because you violated some principles that you didn't even know about.
May have insulted somebody without even knowing it.
You may have insulted someone. A typical example, in America, we respect people who speak directly. You know, tell it like it is. What's on your mind, you know? Tell me frankly what you believe. Well, if you do that in Japan, you are probably going to insult someone, because in the Japanese culture, it is rude to speak directly. It is polite to couch your language in something they call keigo, which is a very, it's like a heavy blanket of honorifics. You know?
Politeness trumps sincerity.
Yes, yes, very much so. So even if you think you know Japanese, you will often make mistakes because you're using the wrong words. Even though you're understood, you haven't couched it in the proper etiquette.
So if you're talking to someone and you use the word you, for example, is it fair to say, depending on the person's social status, you'll use a different word for you?
It goes even deeper than that. The Japanese are very like rank conscious. We were talking about this before. It's based really on Confucianism, where everybody is senior or junior to everybody else. Like within a family, the father outranks the children, obviously, but the older brother outranks any of the younger brothers. So everybody's aware of that. In a company, in a school, 7th graders are more important than 6th graders, you know.
Yeah.
So the actual language that you use will change depending upon whether you're speaking up the eyes or below the eyes.
So relationships are extremely important.
Relationships
and the
are
way you
everything.
talk to somebody depends on what your relationship is
That's
to the
right.
person.
That's right.
And that's very Confucian.
Yes, yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for us to appreciate that. Some people will go there and never appreciate it.
Could we say that Japanese society in general is a far more formal society than America, that we are more informal in America in the way we speak with people?
I don't know if that's, I can't really think of it in terms of formal or informal. It's just different. The Japanese have a concept they call wa. And wa translates to something like harmony or peace or unity. And the goal of society is to preserve wa. Don't create a disturbance.
Don't make waves.
Don't make waves. So if you speak your mind frankly, say you're a businessman and you're having a meeting and you speak your mind, well, this is wrong, we shouldn't have done that. That's disturbing wa.
Would it be fair to say that Rush Limbaugh on the right and Al Franken on the left probably couldn't do in Japan what they do here, even if they were Japanese, talking about Japanese politics?
No, I don't
wouldn't
think
be acceptable.
So. I don't think
probably
so.
Wouldn't be acceptable.
Now, I do have to say, Japanese society is changing. It's a very evolving society. So, you know, my experience from 20, 25 years ago may not apply totally today, but I think it's basically true.
Yeah.
From what I can tell from friends and relatives and what I read, that the basic structure is still intact. Like, I think we were talking about this before, but the word yes, yes and no are very clear in English. Yes is an affirmation and no is the opposite. But in Japan, it's very rude to use the word no. So if you want something done, let's say you need your house painted. You ask the guy, can you do this next week? And he'll say yes. But he'll say yes in such a way that he really means no. He'll say yes, but you understand there are great difficulties, and your job is very important to me, and it's important that I will get to it as soon as I can. That really means no.
But he's not going to say no because that would be impolite.
He won't use the word no. He'll use the word yes, but it will be modified very much.
Yeah. One of the things I think our viewers do know about Japan is that the Japanese attach a lot of importance to education. And I think one of the reasons they know that is that even here in New York City, Japanese Americans and other Asian Americans, Chinese Americans, seem to value education so much more than a lot of Americans who are not of those ethnic groups. In fact, I know that your son is a graduate of Stuyvesant High School in New York City. My nephew also is a graduate of Stuyvesant, and I think most people know or acknowledge that Stuyvesant is probably one of the best high schools in the world, that one must take an entrance examination to get in. Something like only 1 of 8 kids gets in. And the reason I mention this is that I'm often in the neighborhood of Stuyvesant High School, since I'm in the city almost every day. And a huge number of kids who go to Stuyvesant are Asian. Many of them are Japanese. So could you, talk a little bit about education in Japan?
Yeah, I think nowadays, half or maybe more than half of the students at Stuyvesant are Asian. Not so much Japanese anymore, but Korean, Chinese, Indian, and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, education in Japan, it is so important. At the end of World War II, when Japan was really in ruins, I mean, we remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but the other cities were bombed even worse in many cases than those two. Tokyo was virtually an ashtray. People were living in tents and ramshackle huts. The emperor was encouraged by MacArthur to go out and become more human, to speak to the people. So he did, and he would walk around to these shanty towns, and one of the first questions he would always ask are you going to school? The schools were rebuilt, I believe, before the homes were. Schools were considered more important than dwellings.
Part of the Confucian ethic, correct?
Yeah. The Japanese realized that to them education is everything. They have no natural resources. What do they have? They have people. And if their people aren't smart and educated and hardworking, the country will be a failure. So education is just the most important thing.
And we know from international exams in math and science that the Japanese, every time these examinations are given, far excel American kids in these examinations. In fact, Japan usually is number 1, 2, or 3 in the listings, and these exams are just given in the advanced countries of the world, so that the Japanese kids, so to speak, are competing with the best.
Well, one of the things you have to realize is that when a Japanese kid graduates from high school, he has the equivalent of about 14 years of education, not 12. They go to school 5.5 days a week. They don't have a long summer break. I think they have a month off in the summer, and they may have a month off, I think it's around April when the new Japanese calendar really begins. So they're simply in class more than we are, and I think their class day is even longer. So Japanese kids are simply in the classroom a lot longer.
And isn't it true that when they're preparing to go to university, that the year or two before they go to university, once they leave their regular school, they go to another school for training?
That's called juku. It's a
kind of the equivalent of SAT training?
Yeah, we call it cram schools. And it's one of the aspects of Japanese education that I don't particularly agree with Many foreigners or Westerners feel the same way. But the Japanese have a very rigid system. I think this is also based on the old Confucian Chinese system. In China, when somebody wanted to get a job in the government, a civil service job, they had to take tests. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there were photographs of little huts that look like little outhouses. And they would take, the applicant, the scholar, and put him in there. And he had to take an exam for like days, and if you did well on the test, you got the job. If you didn't do well, you didn't get the job. The Japanese have the same system with their better colleges. And each university has its own exam.
Very competitive.
They're rigorous. I've seen the English exam, and it's something that you and I may have trouble passing because the grammar is,
Fair to say that Japanese teenagers who wish to go to university, which is a significant percentage, experience a lot of pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
Tremendous amount of pressure.
Absolutely.
In fact, some people claim that's one of the downsides of the Japanese system, that maybe they're putting too much pressure on kids.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of pressure. In order to pass the exam, just going to high school, even getting good grades is not enough. You have to go to Juku, which is a cram school, which are held on weekends, on Saturdays, Sundays, and after school, too. So the kids may be spending another, 10, 12 hours a week going to this cram school.
I see we're running short on time.
Sure.
This has gone so fast, Jim, and there is so much more that I want to ask you about Japan, and we haven't gotten to Germany. You also lived in Germany and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So I'd like to invite you to come back for another program sometime.
Love to, sure.
Okay. Again, I thank you for coming. As usual, I like to end my program with a quote from Henry David Thoreau. In Walden, Thoreau penned the following words: "To affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts."